time tickets are available in a couple of weeks. It'll be like an hour on Washington getting the checks. Show up, we do it, over with, it's on the phone. We just heard talking about that. Limited audience of page, what's up? I don't know what's going on with that news. Oh, there's 3 chicks out like that, right? Okay. But that's, no.
Hey, do you mind picking up that mic and talking into it for a second? Summertime.
Is there an on-off switch in this phone? We have a... Can you hear me at all? Is that happening at all?
Is that happening? We have a wet spill in aisle 4, wet spill in aisle 4.
So, you guys are going to have to share, you and that Michael have to share a mic, so I was thinking you guys can sit here and we'll put Tishaura in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then that mic sounds better and people are probably more interested in what she has to say than what you have to say.
And no one cares that I look like her should that. So yeah, the less airtime or anything time is good for me. I gotta fucking get my shit together here to some degree though. Which may be impossible to do at this point. Oh my god. This is darling.
You do a little mic check on that one.
Step away. Step away from the vehicle. Step away from the vehicle.
Yeah, Kara's got it. Kara's on.
You just flip them off.
It's off.
Tapping on that phone right there.
I'm sorry?
You mind tapping on the phone?
On this thing here?
On the phone.
The phone.
Just tap on it.
Oh, tap on it.
Is that mic still live?
No, it shouldn't be. It's off. It's supposed to be off. Hey, how goes it? It'll be better in an hour, as I hope. In an hour from now, it'll be much better. Michael Allen's not here yet. What's up, brother? What's up, man? How you been? Good turnout. Yeah.
Upstairs is, like 3-bedroom, full bath, and all that other stuff. Right, so we made one of the bedrooms into like a guest room. She's on the other two. My wife's not off. Her home office. So in a way, we don't really get bothered too much. But in the dark, waiting on me. And I was like, what you doing? Where you been? With my life, I gotta check it out. I got all dogs, so it's a little different. All three of them.
Oh wait, we're all yes. I thought we'd be down here. At least two years in and not doing it. Is that a free? I don't know about that. They put the chairs up here. I don't know if we have to sit down. I thought we'd be like down here. That's right. Steve apparently has no format. I know. Opening statement, then we take three questions. I did hand selected the index card. Told me to pass them out to submit questions. What's now? 67. I have really prepared on check. I talked to Steve for 2 hours. You want to go first? I'm going to follow. I'm going to but I had the couch in the back here. He came out with a week on so they have a way of asking me that it's not too offensive, I think. That way we'll get our things on. And then what's this week? I can ask questions out. Oh yeah, I think this is pretty
Yeah, I got one. Yeah. It seems awfully cramped, but I don't know what else to do.
Should we be in the middle of us? No.
Huh? Yeah, we don't need to have to. Or should we just sit on the bench, you think? What do you think?
I mean, nobody wants to see us.
Exactly, nobody does. But she's gonna sit,
you may.
she's gonna sit there.
Yeah.
The camera will be on her, right? He's ignoring me.
I almost wore corduroys. We would have been matching too close.
Exactly. This is J.C. Penney on sale.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab a drink.
Okay.
Hey, Michael. Hey. You guys are gonna, you and Dennis are gonna have to share a mic. That's fine. We're only gonna be better than Yeah. I gave her the better. We don't even really want to. We got to get high. Well, yeah, that's true. If you want, you can have her sit there and I'll turn the camera a little bit and do a microphone on the other show. That might be better because...
Whatever you think is better is fine with me.
It'll be better because the light will be better.
Okay, good.
And then just make sure you switch these. Just make sure you switch these mics there. So
yeah, unless you have me and Michael in the picture, better.
Yeah. Where'd the other mic go?
One's back there.
Oh. Because the thing is, I had an audio set up and it's not working the way I thought, so the only audio I have is my iPhone, which is right here. Okay. So she's sitting there, people will hear her much better, because she'll be right next to you.
That's fine. So she'd be here? Okay. Does it look like it's gonna work okay?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Great.
I'm just gonna make an adjustment.
I'm just a Luddite. I don't know how these things work. I'll be better than an hour and 15 There are a few times they come to the game. time like this is your first time. How tight the first should be ready to be smoked? Oh, no. Okay. Well, I mean, wait a few minutes, it's hard for minutes late, so people are late. Michael is here, so we can start pretty soon. There's no rush now. Streeter says it's 11 o'clock. You never sit here because the lighting's better. Over here. She's going to sit here because the light's better. And the less they see of you, Michael, the better. The last ones I left. I forgot he doesn't first opened years ago, I couldn't find it like a bad idea. Next to another thing, weird scar, or something weird about it. I think my buddy was like the worst he hasn't really, he still doesn't have Anheuser-Busch product, does he? He still doesn't have Anheuser-Busch product, does he?
No, he will not do that.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's not because of AB, it's because of the distributor, major brand.
They won the
They busted the union.
They busted the union, but they beat whatever that means. Yeah. I also, Steve being the reverse market of the union, so there's a gimmick with it.
Yeah, because I saw you.
Well, you don't sit there and know how to. It's basically the cheapest one they have. Well, they used to have the champagne and bottled beers. They used to have champagne and beer. It's the cheapest thing they have. They said they don't have any schedule right after me, so we can start a little late. We should start sooner. She's going to sit there. She's going to sit because the lane's better. And Streeter says go sooner, but
At the beginning, I think it would be fun to ask people to raise their hands if they're undecided. Take a little poll.
so yeah. And she gave me
I know Steve and I expect the candidates to kind of pack the house with their our real goal is to just get people right? Those are questions. Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
the bankruptcy question. I'm going to ask that question.
Right. That's a good one. I was going to ask that anyway.
Well, we'll say it to the audience.
Right.
Sounds like we're looking to support. So we're looking at going now. But
I want to know, like, one question. She wins the primary. How hard will she be on Andy Coran's Republican nominee? And will she refuse to?
We got most of the cards back, but in the beginning,
yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, and before we got two of them were okay. So yeah, I think a couple of them.
At least they're policy based.
everything that we give us. So if anything really
They're here?
two people this week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
gotta ask them to remove some of their yard signs off from vacant buildings in my neighborhood.
Can you give me addresses? Because seriously, that should be on there.
Well, yeah, there's one at Jefferson and Cherokee. They actually put it on private property. So, no. So that's, I'll send it. It's pretty ridiculous. Read.
Oh, Lou.
His signs are everywhere, but there are places they're not supposed to be. I haven't seen any legal ones.
I have a standing off of the Golden Guarantee. I'm not taking it down, but I look forward to it. I mean, it's like it's all pricked out inside. I'm done looking forward to it. We're going to partner by Lewis again. No, you know, Lewis is, it's a long story. And Lewis is on a board of Eastern State, so I see him there. You have the thrill of the year. Your lights are here to you, not us. For good reason.
Yeah.
We have
The camera frame stops right here. There's an on-off switch on your microphone.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure. You want to check it real quick?
Hello. How are you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, 12.
feedback. I love it.
You guys want to check your mic?
No, we'll just yell.
Wet spill in aisle 4, wet spill.
That's how I'm going to start testing.
Mayday.
Right. Oh.
I guess we're gonna start now. I don't know. I'm doing
See what you did, DJ?
I know.
So can you start? I'll start. Good evening. Can you hear me? Well, raise your hand if you can hear this. Can you hear this? Okay.
I don't get it.
In the back.
Okay. Louder.
Just louder, he says. So I yell louder. Mr. Streeter has the headphones on. We're in business. He's transmitting to the stratosphere. Can you hear me? Okay. We're going to have Tishaura say a few words to start, okay? And then myself, I'm DJ Wilson from Collateral Damage on KDHX, and Michael Allen. You're Michael Allen, aren't you? I thought so, yes. We'll exchange questions. We have a couple questions here that we've already gotten. If you have other questions, you can write them on an index card and mail them in. No, you can hand them in to, where's Ann? Ann is here. Ann, raise your hand. There she is over here. Or just bring them up to me. That's fine, too. So, we'll start with Tishaura saying an opening statement, and then Michael will ask the first question, and we're off to the races.
Great. I have a microphone. How's everybody doing? Good. Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I am Treasurer Tishaura Jones, and I am officially running for mayor. I see all of you have, several of you have our stickers on. Thank you very much. And I am running for mayor because number one, I think there are too many gaps. There are gaps between haves and have-nots, gaps between neighborhoods, gaps between races, and I want to be the mayor that brings us all together. I've been the city treasurer for the last 4 years, just got reelected in November, and under my purview, we have totally upgraded our parking enforcement system, which many of you love, I'm sure. And but also, we have opened the Office of Financial Empowerment, whose primary mission is to help people make better choices with their money, as well as made the office more accountable. And our mantra in the office is we've moved the office from the 19th century to the 21st century. So I'll give you the top 3 things that I care about, and then we can talk about some more questions. If you have any other questions that you feel that we need to dive deeper on, our platform has just been released. You can look that up at www.tishaura4mayor.com, and that's also on the stickers that everybody's wearing as well. So the top 3 things that I think are on everybody's minds: neighborhood safety, looking at all policies and programs through a racial equity lens, and education. So what do I mean by neighborhood safety? obviously making our neighborhood safer. I think we need a public safety director who's got experience in urban crime with cities of our size, to be able to use all the resources on the table to shore up our focused deterrence programs and prevention, to give our police officers more training, to fully staff the police department. And I also have an idea of putting social workers in police departments to help police tackle some of the things that they come in contact with. They come in contact with a little bit of everything, and they aren't always equipped to handle everything that they come in contact with. I believe in decriminalizing substance abuse and mental health abuse or mental health problems, because at any point when we look at who's in the city workhouse, a third to half of the people that are in the city workhouse have mental health problems or substance abuse problems, and we need to decriminalize that. We also need to address the root cause of crime, which in my opinion is poverty, in addition to mental health and substance abuse. Let's take a look at making sure that we provide policies that help all boats in the tide rise. Some of the things that we've done in the Treasurer's Office, i.e. the Office of Financial Empowerment, we need to expand that to more people, expand our classes, which are free, actually, in City Hall Room 220, shameless plug. And then also making sure that we increase our children's savings programs and expand that program to reach more children, because studies show, done right here at Washington University Brown School of Social Work through the Center for Social Development, that children who have less than $500 saved are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to complete college. The other thing that I'd like to do is take a look at all of our programs and policies through a racial equity lens. We already have a roadmap in the Ferguson Commission report and for the sake of all. And it's incumbent upon the next mayor to pick up those calls to action and actually implement them. And I'm the only candidate in this race who has actively picked up 3 of the calls to action: expanding financial empowerment centers, expanding children's savings, and as well as expanding public transit, as we have funded the update of the study for the North-South Metrolink line. And I'm committed to seeing that project through to fruition or to completion, because any mark of a first-class city is the amount of transit that it offers, not only to its citizens, but also to its visitors. Also, on education, even though the mayor doesn't have a direct line of authority to the school district, it doesn't mean that the mayor can't be a better partner. And that means putting all of our arms around all of our children, whether they go to a charter school or district school or private school, and making sure that we are decreasing or eliminating the barriers to education for our children, parents, and teachers. And that could be through public-private partnerships with the corporations and philanthropic organizations. Again, seeing what they need. What is it? Sometimes it's as easy as putting a washer and dryer in a school district and allowing parents to use that, as we've seen in Jennings and other parts of the region. And if you read our platform, one of the things that you'll notice is that we provide links to programs and policies that have already been implemented and that are working in other parts of the country, or in other parts of the world, actually. Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I don't plan on wasting your time or mine by ignoring things that work in other places. So we just need to look at what works, look at the research, look at the data, and bring those programs for our environment and let them roll. And I think by looking at looking outside of our borders and working together and putting all of our arms around taking care of the 319,000 people that we have now, we will start to see our population grow. Because if we don't take care of the people we have now, nobody will want to move here. And in my education and economic development go hand in hand. So kudos to SLPS for regaining their accreditation. Absolutely. But right now is the moment where we need to make sure that we all are making sure that we help them keep that accreditation and return the status of being a first-class school district that it once was. Because my parents graduated from aunts and uncles graduated from Sumner and Roosevelt, and there was a sense of pride and graduating from SLPS. And we want to bring that pride back to not only SLPS, but pride back to being a St. Louisan. So that's just a brief overview of what I'm about and what I stand for, and I look forward to answering all of your questions, and thank you again for coming out and spending your Monday night with us.
Well, thank you, Tishaura. Actually, my first brief half question is to the audience. Raise your hand if you're undecided for mayor at this. Great. Good. That's why we're doing these forums here at the Royale. And so I hope you come back for the future nights we're having with the other candidates. Tishaura's so gracious to be our first person to sit here and take the questions from our expert panel. We're experts, right?
Where are they?
I don't know, somewhere up here. Anyway, so my first question is about tax incentives and subsidies. I know it's something that came out in your platform when you're calling for reviewing the amount of subsidy to projects in the Central Corridor. I want to start with a specific example, which is the City Foundry project in Fort Parkway, which on the surface looks like an amazing, creative, inventive project. $134 million first phase, $340 million ultimately creating retail in the center of the city, revitalizing an abandoned steel foundry, creating long-term permanent retail jobs. But the details raise questions. Only 44% of the $134 million comes from private sources, the remaining coming from state and city public dollars. And on top of that, the developers of this project have been known to be recruiting retail tenants out of established business districts in South St. Louis, using these subsidies to offer better deals on rent than maybe private developers in other parts of the city who aren't receiving this kind of money get to receive. I've done a lot of work in development, but I still have doubts. But I wonder, as the mayor, what could you do to make this a better deal for taxpayers, this kind of a project? This one's out of the gate. Its financing is in law now. But other deals will be coming at you.
Exactly. So I believe in attaching community benefit agreements to large developments and making sure that we are getting a return on our investment. If we are foregoing tax dollars, then we need to get something in return for that. And we've seen this in other cities. So most times the things that I talk about, I've studied in other cities. So for example, talking about tax abatements in it. For example, the city of Cleveland attaches a community benefit to every major development. And a good girlfriend of mine is actually the person who crafts those agreements. Also, and this is a bad example, but stay with me. The new stadium that they're proposing in Las Vegas to lure the Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas has a huge community benefits agreement attached to it that has direct investment in low-income areas as a result of them building that stadium in Las Vegas. And that's going to build new recreators in low-income areas. It has a minimum percentage of people that have to come from the Vegas area or the Las Vegas area as far as the jobs that will be available there. And they also have a small board of people that will hold them accountable, and they'll have to report every quarter on how they are meeting the objectives that they said they would meet in this agreement. So not only do we craft agreements, we have to make sure that we're holding developers accountable for the things that they say they're going to do. And if they don't, I'm in favor of using clawback provisions to take back some of the projects incentives that we've given out already.
Okay, this one will be a generic, fairly easy one. For 15 years, Francis Slay has been mayor of the city of St. Louis. What do you think, if you become mayor, what about his administration and what he's tried to do and done would you try to maintain, and what would you try to change?
So a couple of things that I like that the mayor's done is the sustainability plan. I would definitely keep that and see where we can go further on some of the metrics that they're measuring. And also the mayor has helped us meaning the treasurer's office, become a member of the Cities for Financial Empowerment Member City Network, which is an elite group of about 16 cities that meet twice a year to exchange best practices and financial offering to their cities or to their citizens. So those are some things that I would definitely keep and actually try to take those things to the next level.
And what you might change?
What I might change is maybe using the veto pen a little more.
All right. On your platform, you call for an independent commission to study redistricting the Board of Aldermen. We're reducing from 28 to 14 in 2023. I wonder, in St. Louis, we are increasingly critical of the Board of Aldermen. I think there's more awareness of what it does, how it functions. The votes are finally, after hundreds of years, it seems, now posted online. But a lot of people would say our first contact with city government is our aldermen, right? And the aldermen do represent us. And so if the Board of Aldermen doesn't really draw the map, how will the citizens have a guarantee that our voice will be heard by this independent commission? How do you think that would work, and who would appoint members to that?
So right now we have independent commissions on the state level when we are redrawing state house and state senate districts. And that process, if I remember correctly, because I was in the State House when it happened, has a lot of community input, and they have several public meetings where the public is able to weigh in on some of the changes that are being considered. And so that's what I would do to make sure that we have as much public input as possible, because that's the environment that I come from. I served in the House for 4 years or 2 terms, and my last term was assistant minority floor leader, and I am used to trying to get at least 82 votes or at least half or consensus before moving forward, and also sending surveys out to my constituents, asking them, what do you think I should work on this year? These are the things I'm thinking about working on. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think we need more public engagement, and now we have the tools to have more public engagement than ever before, through everybody having access to social media, access to websites, so we have an opportunity to make this a process where everybody gets a chance to weigh in.
Okay, this weekend information came out about your bankruptcy, your personal bankruptcy some 20-some years ago. The question I have about that is not so much about that particularly, but you've been in the public sphere for a long time, elected state rep twice, city treasurer twice. Was there a time earlier that you might have thought you might have come out publicly about that, like in talking about economic empowerment and saying how you've learned through this, and why didn't you come out earlier about this, and why now?
Well, I've made it no secret. Anytime that I'm talking to a group of people about why I'm so passionate about financial empowerment, I have mentioned to several groups that I filed bankruptcy before. And I was elected treasurer twice, which in my opinion has a direct role with how I handle finances. And if I was elected twice and it didn't come out then, what's the reason for it coming out now? And it's we know that. Right. We know why it's coming out now. But in my opinion, it makes me human. And people want to know that their public officials are human first and can relate to their everyday experiences. And the circumstances around my personal bankruptcy, my father just got out of jail. I had a business that failed, and my mother had just got diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I had to make a lot of choices, being an only child, the only adult child, and making a lot of choices on how to take care of my family, how to take care of my father's affairs, how to take care of my mother, and how are we going to survive. And I don't think that the choice that I made is any different than any other choice that somebody in a similar situation would make.
And how long ago was this?
This was last century. So let's be real here. This was in the last century, in 1999, and my mother died in 2000. So now it's coming out now. And hey, y'all, I filed bankruptcy. Hey.
Speaking of last century, there was a time when the Missouri General Assembly was dominated by the Democratic Party. Seems like a long time ago. Getting farther in the rear view. The mayor of St. Louis is our representative off into the state government. Francis Slay famously did secure local control of the police, reversing a Civil War era state law that seized our police force.
Yeah, I found that bill a couple of times.
Past St. Louis leaders have secured incentives now criticized by many of the Republicans, like historic tax credits and low-income tax credits. Yet we often hear from people in city government that we can't get anything done in Jefferson City. You might be uniquely posed because you have gotten things done in Jefferson City.
Yes.
As mayor, what will you do differently than your predecessor to get things done on the state level? We know there's all kinds of things from land reutilization authority, vacant land laws, to redistricting, to police powers, to the school districts that might have to go through that.
Yes, absolutely.
Public transit, metro expansion.
Yeah. So I am the only candidate in this race that has a great relationship with some of our statewide and both House and Senate leadership. Speaker Richardson as well as Speaker Pro Tem Richards, I've served with both of them and have great relationships with both of them. Our new Parsons, I served with him, as well as Eric Schmidt. So I think that we can use those established relationships to work better across the aisle. And also, when I was in the legislature, I was known for working across the aisle. And I think that while we may not be able to stop bad legislation from happening, I think that I could be able to pick up the phone and call Speaker Richardson or Speaker Pro Tem Richards and say, hey, you know, this is how this is going to affect the urban areas, and what can we do a little differently? What's the compromise here? And I think that they will listen and possibly make those changes.
When looking for a degree of difference between you and some of your opponents, one issue that may be in the rearview mirror but still happened was the NFL stadium. Lyda voted for it, Antonio voted for it, and Lewis voted for it. And at the time, I think you were against it.
Yes.
And the other issue was MetroLink. You found $2 million in your treasurer's budget to help fund the study that will further the odds of it being funded. Are those two issues you think that are important to voters?
Yes, I believe those are very important issues to voters. And if y'all will remember, to paraphrase Jay-Z, I said that St. Louis has 99 problems and the Rams ain't one. And I still believe that, I like that. Can we do that? And I still believe that even though we're looking at a soccer stadium, I still think we have 99 problems and MLS isn't one. And if they're really committed to building in St. Louis and they really want to come here, then they'll find a way to find the money themselves. Because we have to take care, we have a whole host of problems that I think we need to take care of that I don't think involve another sports complex. Now, do I think, thank you. Now, do I think we need to rehab the sports complexes that we do have? Absolutely, to make sure that we are still competitive when the CBC and the Sports Commission is going out and getting games and tournaments to come to St. Louis. But again, the devil's in the details on those projects, on the financing of those projects. And our comptroller has expressed some real concerns in recent days, and I look forward to working with her to see how we can find the money, or help the Blues, find the money, or Scottrade find the money to upgrade that facility, because it's a great facility and I love hockey. So.
All right. Also on the theme of differences between your opponents and you, or similarities, you talked about the police department and improving management. It's a big part of your platform. In your opening address, you talked about putting social workers in the police department. Seems like a good idea. One of your opponents, at least, Alderman French, says that the problem with the police department is at the top, and that Chief Dodson would be fired as soon as he became mayor. Mm-hmm. Is Antonio French right?
I think we need to make some changes all over. Everything is on the table, in my opinion. Everything. That means every department, every penny spent, everything should be on the table, and not just focusing on the police department. I think we need, like I said, we need to look at all of our programs and policies through a racial equity lens, making sure that every dollar that we spend, that it's making sure that they're towards policies that help all the boats in the tide rise, not just those who live in wealthy zip codes. So let's make sure that we are spending our money in the right way, and making sure that the policies that we are, or the things that we're spending our money on, our IEI priorities, are helping people and not just developers.
This will give you an opportunity to bash the media. Needs the bash, of course. A couple of stories that came out, I thought the one was vastly overplayed and it was sort of thin soup to begin with. The Back in Business headline. And then the others, I heard there's another one coming out, came over, maybe I missed it already, about your travels, about traveling around a lot, etc. Then of course there's the one and only Elliot Davis in your car, which I must commend you. I think that was a good way to handle Elliot, because you answer the same question with the same answer over and over again. Because he only has one question.
He only does. Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how do you handle that? Coming when media comes with you stuff, I mean, can you? It says, I know in the American there was some pushback against the Post-Dispatch story, but it's probably going to get weirder the closer it gets to March 7th.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that, and how do you view that?
So it's funny. So let's start with the travel first, because that one hasn't come out. So y'all are the first to hear this, and hello internet, y'all are gonna hear this too. I get invited to speak a lot of places, okay? When I got into this office, I was already recognized as a rising leader in my party. And as a result of some of the things that we've done in the Treasurer's office, I've been invited to speak several places, but also I go to several conferences to try to learn more so we can bring those ideas back to St. Louis. Isn't that a novel idea? So, so this notion that somehow travel is a bad thing, and that we should be touting that, you know, someone hasn't traveled anywhere in their number of years in office, you see where that gets us? So I plan on making sure that, you know, again, that we leave no stone unturned when it comes to looking at best practices and research-based policies that we can bring back to our environment and tweak for our environment and let it roll. And I think that the people deserve a mayor who knows how the world works. So the car issue became a little bit, you know, too much. You know, I just got tired of answering the question, so I gave it up. And now I drive a nice used American car. You know, shout out to UAW. And what was the other question? Oh, about the back in business story. So we publicly put out an RFQ for investment banks to put a pool together. So if there were some changes in the market, because the Treasurer's office can issue its own debt out separate from the city, and our credit rating is actually a little higher than the city's, and it got upgraded during my administration. So yay for that. So we have a pool of bankers that we have already interviewed. So if the market changes or we find that there's something that we can take advantage of that's going to save the city money, then we already have a pool of investment bankers that we can go to and start that transaction pretty quickly. And as a result of having that pool in place, we've saved the city over $4.6 million. Yes, come on. That's a lot of hard work. And one of the bankers at one of the firms that we employed went to jail 20 plus years ago. Here we go again, talking about things that happened in the last century. And has since, you know, took the 10 years off cooling period, and the SEC gave him his license back. And just like I had my troubles and I went through some things to be redeemed, and forgave myself for my financial troubles, I think that we should be, this is a story about redemption for him. And it's a real simple value. Do we believe that people have served and paid their debt to society or not? And this man has. and has since been, been a great banker. And St. Louis isn't the only place he works with. The firm that he works with, IFS Securities, has done 700 transactions in the state of Missouri before even hiring him to work for their firm. So it's not so much about this particular banker, but let's take a look at the entire picture. And using that particular firm helped us save over $4.6 million. So I think that's an investment well spent.
And there was nothing in the article that suggested missing money, email fees, and something else. It didn't. It's just that he had this conviction umpteen years ago.
Right, umpteen years ago in the last century, and now they've decided to put that on the front page as though there's something wrong going on, but there wasn't.
And as the race tightens, it gets closer, and more of this stuff is going to surface.
Yeah. Anonymous packets are going to start to be delivered to reporters that talk about other candidates. Now, granted, the only opposition research that we have done is on ourselves, is on me. So I know all the dirt out there on me. And honestly, there was no surprise when we got our report back. But I think that, that's a distraction. And I think that voters are smarter than that. And you want to know how any one of the candidates in this race are going to address issues that you care about. I don't think it matters that one of the candidates had some financial trouble, or one of the candidates drove a car that was allowed to be driven by city code. I think that you all want to know. Excuse me, there's a gnat around me. I think you all want to know how to address the issues that you care about the most. What are we going to do to change your day-to-day lives?
Right. Something that has been an issue in neighborhood commercial districts that is not something I think Elliot Davis would ever thrust his microphone in someone's face about, but should, perhaps, is the alderman control over business licensing. The owner of this bar famously tried to open a version of the Royale on Cherokee Street, only to be stymied by the longtime alderman Craig Schmidt, who had implemented his own unilateral moratorium on new bars in his ward. Yet across the street in Ken Ortman's 9th ward, anyone could get a liquor license and open a bar. That kind of sort of arbitrary planning has infuriated a lot of small business owners. Some say it's a major impediment to growing business districts. That was on Cherokee Street, so one side of the street has one set of rules, the other has another. As mayor, what could you do? Would you sign bills into law that come out of the Board of Aldermen and create sort of spot zoning or business license standards based on one alderman's preference?
I think what we need to do is it can be complicated, but I think what we need to do is have a citywide plan and not do develop. Thank you. I think if we do development ward by ward, neighborhood by neighborhood, we'll see what we see now, which is some wards and neighborhoods are flourishing while others are neglected. Let's do a citywide plan with the community to ask you what you need, what you like to see in your neighborhoods. What's the low-hanging fruit for you? What sort of amenities are missing from your neighborhoods? Like, there are certain parts of North St. Louis that are bank deserts, food deserts. Certain parts of South St. Louis also that are bank deserts and food deserts. Let's see what we can do. Infrastructure we have in school buildings that have gone empty for so many years. And again, get your input to see, what can we do to address some of the blight in your communities, what you'd like to see there, and then overlay that with, what businesses are coming in and just say, hey, the citizens of this particular neighborhood said that they don't want this, but they'd rather have that. And let's see what we can do to move St. Louis forward doing that.
Okay, this is a question from the audience. So, Privy and I are reading a question from the audience. Mayor Slay wants to close New Life Evangelistic Center at the behest of a rich downtown developer. New Life is a last resort shelter and does not pose more than minor nuisance problems from homeless residents. Will you commit to keeping this shelter open and upgrading homeless facilities in the city?
So the problem I see with homeless services in the city is that the city has shouldered the burden of homeless services for far too long. and we need to spread the love amongst the region. I would like to see offering of homeless amenities or shelters in other parts of the city or other parts of the region, because homelessness just doesn't happen downtown. It just happens that all of the services are located downtown. But homelessness happens all over our region. It happens in St. Charles. It happens in North County. It happens in South County. And I think that those people would rather have somewhere that they could go that's close to where they are, instead of uprooting sometimes their entire family to be relocated to a shelter that's downtown. So let's see what we can do to work with the region on expanding homeless services, on really paying attention to the existing 10-year plan that we had to eradicate homelessness. And also, there are some models, again, across the country in Denver and Albuquerque that have day laboring programs that employ homeless people to maybe clean up alleyways or clean up things that our streets and refuse department can't get to. And then at the end of the day, they pair them with social workers to see what they need and try to pair them with those services. If it's housing, if it's mental health issues, if it's substance abuse, and so far through those programs, they've started to see that people have started to get full-time jobs with the city, and start to live on their own and they aren't homeless anymore. Go fig, right?
This was not my question, but he did ask about Larry. Give me 30 seconds on Larry.
So that homeless shelter was downtown before downtown was regentrified.
Yeah.
So I think that currently it's pretty dangerous for those who use that service. So let's see what we can do to bring it up to code. Let's see what we can do to make sure that we're providing a safe option for homeless. And I'm just saying this outside of Larry Rice. Let's see what we can do to make sure that homeless shelter is providing services that people need. Obviously, to for the temporary for homeless shelters, but also to get back on their feet.
Also on regionalism, here's a fill in the blank. The next independent city to join St. Louis County as a municipality should be blank.
The next independent city to join St. Louis County should be voted on by the people.
This is in the wonder of the internet. Mr. Streeter has devised this. We're talking to the stratosphere here. This is a question that was submitted through the internet. What can the mayor do to address the number of guns on the streets?
So, unfortunately, the legislature has passed preemption laws that state that our laws cannot be more restrictive than what's currently on state law. Which is unfortunate, and we see a growing trend of preemption laws, not only on gun laws, but on minimum wage and other things that restrict local municipalities' ability to govern themselves locally and to establish our own laws locally. So since we're in the wild, wild west, and Missouri really, 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 really respects people's Second Amendment rights, I think that we have to do what we can on the local level to make it safer. That could be maybe there was an idea of a gun court not too long ago for people who have illegal guns, and see what we can do there. But our hands are really, really tied because the state law is so. Anybody can get a gun. You don't even need a CCW anymore.
What
So
about
storage. That's another. Actually, Senator Nasheed has actually filed a bill on gun locks and gun storage. So
we have a model currently.
Right.
All right, another question from the audience. What are your plans for ensuring healthy public education, be it charter, city, or parochial schools?
I think we talked about this already. We want to make sure that the city is a better partner when it comes to educating our children. That means making sure that we are doing what we can to remove barriers to education for teachers, parents, and students. Also, making sure that we expand our children's savings program, because studies again show that children who have access to children's savings programs are 7 times more likely to go to college. That also could be an idea that I've put in my platform. You can read it at tishauraformayor.com, shameless plug. Is expanding youth employment to year-round youth employment, and also offering the first 2 years of community or vocational or technical school free for graduating seniors with a C average.
And a follow-up, the Mayor Slay was an enthusiastic supporter of charter schools and backed the state takeover of the district. Have we benefited from his policies on education?
So we have seen, we have seen a stable leadership in the special appointed board over the last several years that we've been under state receivership, and also we've had a superintendent at the helm that we've had there for several years, and I think that we have benefited from having the same leadership over several years. And then I bucked my party when I was in the state house and filed a bill to expand charter schools statewide, but also increase their accountability standards to match that of districts, but also allowing charter schools to open single gender schools. So the Hawthorne School for Girls was opened as a result of that bill. And I felt it was important because I'm a single mom, and at the time when I filed that legislation, I was looking at educational options for my child, who at the time was 4, and it was, and I started to think, oh, wow, if I'm having difficulty, looking at educational choices for my own child, I can't imagine what other families are going through. So I felt that personally that I should really take a chance and file legislation that wasn't very popular, obviously. But it passed because I felt that, number one, we had charter schools in our city that weren't educating our children, and they needed to go. So we needed something to be able to push bad actors out and create an environment for good, healthy charter schools to start. And I think as a result, we've gotten, when we look at the charter schools that we currently have, a lot of them are doing very well. And those that haven't been able to, do very well, there's been a clear path for closure for those charter schools.
Couple more questions here. One of the proposals you made, and I didn't read a detailed version of it. Maybe you have one out there, but you mentioned it somewhere where you were in favor of working on or proposing to close the medium security prison on Hall Street.
Yes.
How would you go about that, and where would those folks go?
So at any time, when you look at the population at the city workhouse, a third to half of the population is in there for mental health and substance abuse problems. And I think that while violent offenders absolutely need to be behind bars, I think we need to have the appropriate punishment for those who are there for non-violent offenses, and work and use the money saved from closing the workhouse to provide more access to more resources for mental health and substance abuse.
Hey, can I ask
about how many prisoners are there now? It's
like 12.
1,200.
Can I came here for exactly that question to ask you. By you dealing with the workhouse or dealing with a new home, for example. I buy a new home in the city of St. Louis. I have a city inspector come check the house. They come to see cracks on the floor, cracks in the window. That'll put fill. But if you go down there to the workhouse, you see cracks in the window, cracks in the floor. It's like the kitchen is terribly infested. Holding city employees accountable for their actions also, because I was one of the gladiators that they was putting in the papers and everything, and I went through surgery, and I'm still going through problems at the age of 27 due to the fact of what was going on, betting on inmates to fight and everything. We went through a lot of stuff, and a lot of letters got
put out there, even to the public safety guy, Eddie something, but no response. Like, is these people gonna get held accountable due to the next mayor coming in? Even dealing with the Chief Dawson, with the other officer, with the police shooting, how did they get investigated for real? Like, getting held accountable.
I'd like to piggyback on what he said as a former woman in uniform to that same workhouse. The reason why I resigned from my position was exactly for what he said. That's true. I want to bring light to that because, you know, I know you from working alongside of you from a former representative who I know you would dare say has championed and been a progressive voice for you and also for our city. One of the reasons why I'm here today is to listen to language for your behalf because he's right. I worked in that institution on the first, second, and third. I know that chain of command very well. I know the persons on every level. I've done the necessaries in passing of information to my chain of command and never got a response back. Was even subjected to harassment, followed, and fired once and rehired because they realized who I knew. I want some transparency in regards to this man. We're supposed to allow our persons in jail and incarceration protections. Right. They're incarcerated, but they are allowed protections per that system. We're also supposed to allow them the right to advocate per their behalf, and that's not afforded to them. And I'm not saying that because I don't know. They call me Miss Green on the streets. I'm from the block, as they say. And I speak their language, but also speak a different language that you speak. And we haven't had a champion advocating for their behalf. And those are my brothers and sisters. Those are her brothers and sisters. And I would dare say what I know about you, Tishaura, language-wise and your ability to step across the aisle, you can champion that particular issue for me as a single parent mom who's also gone through bankruptcy, who's also going through homelessness as well. I want that question answered. I want it answered for my brothers and sisters in uniform as well, the white ones and the black ones. I want it answered. I want it answered with some due diligence as well. Who should hold your colleagues accountable? French, Reed, Lida, what are the other ones?
We got 12. We get a half hour to name it.
I'm not just a voice. I got friends in here too. And I can get on Facebook and make things be known. But the thing that I want to see happen, and you're using the language, and I respect you for it, is that gets recognized. Because that's my brother in jail. That's my two cousins in jail. Down there now, that's my three sisters by, not blood, by relationship, out there as well on those federals. And I need that done right.
So listen to me clearly. We must close the workhouse.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
And when I took over the treasurer's office, a lot of you know that the treasurer's office was mired in scandals. Some of our employees went to jail. Some of them were ghost employees. A lot of people were. 3.5 short years, we have totally changed the environment, the culture, the accountability of all employees in the treasurer's office. And I think that those of you who know what I've done in the treasurer's office know that I will work harder to do the same thing as mayor, because at the end of the day they're your tax dollars and you deserve to know how they're being spent, and if they're being, and show what did President Biden say? Show me your budget and I'll show you, and you show me your priorities. We need that the workhouse should have been closed years ago when we built the city jail. That was the reason why we built the city jail, to close the workhouse. But now both are open, and the are deplorable. They're inhumane for those who have to go there, and we have to close it now.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go.
All right, we're going to get into our home stretch here.
Yeah.
One more question each, and I'm going to go to a more general way of thinking about the office. Maybe a civic figure who can encourage participation.
Yes.
4 years ago, we re-elected Francis Slay with very low voter turnout. We have chronic low turnout in aldermanic races. maybe the plethora of candidates right now will encourage turnout, but the word on the street, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of attention on this race, which is pivotal, given how long it's self-included, could be 16 years, could control a lot of the city's destiny.
No, let me stop you right there before you continue. I also am encouraging term limits. We should have term limits.
I saw that on the platform. But what are some ideas for increasing voter participation in these races, these city races?
So I think the last presidential election, what we saw was there was an awakening of the electorate via those who supported either candidate in the election, and we see that now. We saw that in the August election, where almost all 28 wards had committee persons that were in play. It was beautiful. And then now we have almost all of the odd numbered wards that are currently on the ballot, multiple candidates in those wards as well. And it's incumbent upon everybody here to do your research about your candidates. And I see some of the candidates in the room here today. And hopefully, what happens is the turnout in those in the wards will increase turnout in the mayoral election, because I've never seen this kind of excitement about the mayoral election as well, and I'm excited to talk to all of you about what I stand for. So, but on the other hand, will we see an increase in turnout? I think it'll just be a marginal increase in turnout, unfortunately, because the last I think our turnout hovers somewhere around 25-26%. That means only a quarter of you will determine who rules for the entire city, which is sad. So if you are, I know that you are a part of the 25%. I want you all to go home to your neighbors and friends and say, hey, there's a mayoral election here, because local elections are more important than elections 900 miles away. 9 miles away is where we should be concentrating our efforts.
I have one more question from the audience, and I have one last question myself. This is from the audience. You touched on this earlier. Part of your platform is to examine city policies and programs with a racial equity lens. What can you tell us about how you will specifically do this, or who in the region you will look to for guidance and expertise in this area?
Absolutely. We talked about looking at the Ferguson Commission reports and For the Sake of All reports, because they already give us a roadmap to follow to look at all of our policies and procedures through a racial equity lens. And all of you know by now that I am not a fan of reinventing the wheel. So we already have a roadmap that's set in front of us by the hard work of the Ferguson Commission, by the hard work of St. Louis University and the professors at Washington University. I think that they didn't do that research in vain. Let's pick up those reports and make sure that we are implementing as many call to actions as we can. And they're really clear and delineated about what we should do and how we should do it. And I think also we look around the country for cities that are getting it right on race. And what can we learn from them? What can we learn from what they've experienced? What can we learn from Cincinnati, for example, who had serious race riots back in 2001, and with the recent gentleman who lost his life at the hands of the University of Cincinnati police, and how they didn't see another uprising when that happened, because their community was already together and already as one, so they knew how to handle that situation. So again, let's look around the country, see who's doing it right, and see what we can do to make it right here.
Okay, a few comments from me here. You mentioned the previous treasurer. In a previous life, in a previous century, I was a reporter for the Riverfront Times. I did an exhaustive story on the previous treasurer. And in all my years in doing reporting, it was the only time people came to me and said, can I go off the record? And I'd say, yeah. And then they'd say something positive about the previous treasurer. They didn't want to be quoted saying something positive about him because they were afraid that something would happen bad, and they'd be in public saying something positive about him. That's never happened before. When you You say something unpleasant
Right,
about somebody.
right.
But that was the concern they had about him. And as far as my earlier comment about the bankruptcy, that's out. It's in the Business Journal had it, the KMOX Radio had it, and I mean, I'm drinking a Miller High Life now because it's the cheapest beer I can buy. I think bankruptcy is a big deal, and this is the only time I have a Tishaura Jones Trump analogy, but our new president. I stand corrected. Okay. I want to touch a little bit on the end here about media coverage and race. I think the old, and when I was with the RFT, I covered Bosley and Harmon and Slay and all that stuff back in the 90s, so I'm painfully aware of all this. And the Tom Villa and Roboto bit, the whole bit, split note. I think it's a bit lame and infantile to analyze the current situation, just black-white candidates, because I think one of the things you have to talk about is that the 28 wards in the presidential primary in March, 12 of them in the city went for Bernie. Okay, 12 wards went for Bernie. They're all Southside wards, and I don't think they look at things, and that's not just an age thing; it's some of the age, but they look at things differently. This is not Tony Roboto and Tom Villa and Freeman Bosley. And Freeman Bosley won the fight.
And I think Steve Roberts Sr. was
right,
in that race.
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, things have changed a bit since then. So I want you to comment on the sort of like the knee-jerk coverage by some of the media and how you think it's different now with the field that we have running for mayor.
Right, so I have also received many comments via social media and personally saying, oh, there are too many black candidates in the race, and because there are 5 black candidates in the race, y'all are going to allow the white candidate to just snake right up the middle and become the next mayor because y'all are going to split up the black vote. Well, I think that our electorate is smarter than that. I think that you all, and you've shown this in the last several elections, that you all want a candidate that's going to be accountable to you, that's going to keep their promises, that has progressive policies that are going to move St. Louis forward, that has a record of policies along their political career of enacting policies that have moved St. Louis forward in some way, shape, or form, or also policies that address everybody, not just those who live in wealthy zip codes. So, I think that the person who wins in March will be a person who can appeal to everybody, regardless of their background, who has policies that address everyone regardless of their background, who has a heart for public service, who has the experience in leading large departments, who also has experience in looking outside our borders and working with people from other countries and other cities to bring best practices here, because we seem to be stuck in a rut right now. I often say that we have our heads stuck in the sand while the rest of the world is moving past us and we're just standing around looking at each other. And I want to be the mayor that takes us there. And I think that people are smart enough to be able to see the differences between the candidates to choose one who's going to match their interests and move St. Louis forward.
All right, well. I was going to ask for a closing statement, but that seems like a great summation.
Yeah, I think so.
And I was going to look up the next one of these nights. DJ, you probably know off the top of your head, right?
Yeah, Lida is a week from Monday.
All right.
20th. Yeah.
So come on back and hear from the next candidate. Thank you, Tishaura Jones.
Next Monday is Martin Luther King Day, and I hope that we will all be spending it as a day on, not a day off. The Treasurer's Office will be doing our usual community service project that we do every year. We take a school that needs some help, that the janitors can't get to everything, and we go in and we clean the school from top to bottom, repaint, do whatever they need us to do, and we bring our families. So I really look forward to doing that with my staff on Martin Luther King Day, and I hope you all spend it community service project to do the same.
Excellent. All right, and you'll be around for a little bit?
Yes, I'll be
here.
here.
Talk to Tishaura.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
God bless you.
See y'all later.
I won't drop the mic, just leave the mic on the table.
leave it. Yeah, don't like that. Here. Oh, grab some of these cards.
Yeah, we'll pick up later.
Like this one. Like, well.
No, they don't.